Good evening. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Marty Schickman, and I'm Director of Eastern Michigan University's Center for Jewish Studies. I'd like to welcome you tonight to tonight's lecture by Naftali Aklum, Being Black, Jewish, and Israeli. But before I tell you more about tonight, I'd like you to know a little bit about our next presentation, concerning which I'm extremely excited. And that is a conversation with Kenneth D. Wald. And it will take place on Monday, October 19 at 7 o'clock p.m., just in time for our upcoming election. Ken Wald is Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Political Science and Samuel Shorstein Professor Emeritus of American Jewish Culture and Society at the University of Florida. He's one of America's foremost authorities on the role of religion in public life, and his books include Religion and Politics in the United States and The Foundations of American Jewish Liberalism. Wald is currently studying the impact of the Holocaust on political attitudes of American Jews, and he will be interviewed by our own much beloved Professor of Political Science, Jeffrey Bernstein. Now, among those I'd like to thank for tonight are my board, Hillel at Eastern Michigan University, the Jewish Federation of Greater Ann Arbor, the Harold Grinspoon Foundation, Temple Beth Emet, and the Beth Israel Congregation. Tonight is our second annual Art and Mary Schumann Lecture, named for two of the dearest friends and supporters of Eastern Michigan University Center for Jewish Studies. I cannot imagine the CJS ever having become such a remarkable institution without Art and Mary's many years of wisdom and assistance. Our speaker tonight, Naftali Aklum, is founder and CEO of the Yerus Project, an educational experience that focuses on the history, culture, and traditions of Ethiopian Jewry, while also aiming to stimulate economic development among Ethiopian Israelis. His mission is to empower the Ethiopian community and to contribute to a pluralistic Israeli society that views its diversity as a source of strength. Mr. Aklum has asked that you record your questions using the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. My assistant, Cole Nelson, will provide a selection of these to Mr. Aklum at the conclusion of his presentation. Mr. Aklum has also asked that student questions be given priority, and I hope you can appreciate that. So now, it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you Naftali Aklum.
Martin, thank you so much for the warm introduction. Good evening, Michigan. Greetings from the down south of Israel, the city of Beersheba. It's 2 in the morning right here, and I'm very happy to be with you this evening to present to you the story of the Ethiopian Jews being Black, Israeli, and Jewish. My name is Naftali Aklum. I was born in Ethiopia in 1979. I'm the youngest of 12 brothers and sisters. And I made Aliyah, I immigrated with my family to Israel in 1980 when I was 1 year old. I would like to share a screen with you, the PowerPoint of my lecture. Okay. One second. So in this picture from Ethiopia, you can see on the left, my mother and 2 of my sisters. In the middle, you can see my late father, may he rest in peace. And in the right, you can see 4 of my brothers and sisters. Those pictures were taken in Ethiopia. The Jews of Ethiopia Beta Israel community. Many people are asking me, How does it happen that we have Black Jews living in the continent of Africa in a country called Ethiopia? For a lot of people, when they have the image of Jews, mostly for them is white European Jews. I am here to show people the diversity within Jewish people. There are Black Jews as well. So how did the Ethiopian Jews arrive to Ethiopia? There is two versions of how the Ethiopian Jews came to Ethiopia. The first version is the version of King Solomon and Queen Sheba. As you all know, King Solomon was the wisest man on earth. And all the kings and the queens in his time wanted to have advice from him, to learn from him. Queen Sheba was the queen that controlled the countries that we know today: Ethiopia, Eritrea, Yemen, Egypt. All this area used to call the ancient Kush, and she was the queen of that area. She also heard about King Solomon. She came here. They fell in love, and they brought a son to the world, Menelik I. When Menelik was 14 years old, he told his mother that he wants to visit and he wants to know his daddy more. So he came here. He spent few months with his father, and after a few months, his father, King Solomon, told him, "You have to go back to your mother, you have to go back to Kush." But King Solomon didn't send his son alone. He sent thousands of people back with him to Kush, to Ethiopia. And some believe that we, the Ethiopian Jews, came out from the thousands of people that went back with Menelik, the son of King Solomon and Queen Sheba, back to Ethiopia. That's the first version. The second version is after the destruction of the first temple. When King Nebuchadnezzar came and conquered this area, we had the 12 tribes here in Israel. One tribe decided to escape to the south to Egypt. Now, if you are familiar with the Nile River, there is the blue Nile River and there is the white Nile River. The blue Nile River starts in Ethiopia and it comes down to Egypt. This tribe walked through the blue Nile River until they ended up in Ethiopia. And that's the tribe of Dan. We, the Ethiopian Jews, believe to the second version, the version of the tribe of Dan. Now we are speaking about ancient community that for thousands of years thought that they are the only Jews left in the world. We were isolated. We never had any relationship to any other Jewish community in the world. And that's why we thought that we are the only Jews left. In the history of Ethiopia, there was lots of kings and queens that wanted to convert us into Christianity. But we kept Judaism sometimes with our life because we knew that if we will not keep Judaism, Judaism will disappear. I will tell you even more than that. When the first Ethiopian immigrants came from Ethiopia to Israel in the beginning of the 80s, some of them were surprised to see white Jews. The same surprise that when people look at me today, they see me and they don't see a Jewish guy. They see maybe a Rasta man from Montego Bay, Jamaica, because I'm a black man with dreadlocks. But I'm here to show the diversity within the Jewish people. In Ethiopia, the non-Jews, the Muslims and the Christians used to call us falasha. Now, falasha means a stranger, someone who is not in his land. This is how the non-Jews used to call us in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, we called ourselves Beta Israel, the house of Israel. Why? Because we always wanted to remind ourselves that we belong to Am Israel. Now, 1973 was a very important year in the history of the Ethiopian Jews. In 1973, this rabbi, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, was the chief rabbi here in Israel. And he was the first rabbi to announce and to say it loud and clear: Ethiopian Jews are Jews by law, and we in Israel have to do everything in our power to bring them from Ethiopia to Israel. The first rabbi to say it loud and clear. In Israel, I don't know if you know, but we have a special law, the law of return, a law that exists in Israel from 1952, which said that every Jew, no matter where he is, he can come to Israel and be a citizen. In 1973, for the first time, the state of Israel recognized us as Jews, which means now the law of return apply on the Ethiopian Jews. But the Ethiopian Jews didn't came in 1975, in 1973. They even didn't came in 1976. In 1975, by the way, the Ashkenaz chief rabbi also announced that Ethiopian Jews are Jews by law, and we have to do everything in our power to bring them from Ethiopia to Israel. In 1977, a big thing happened in Israel. The Likud party won for the first time the election of Israel, in Israel. And the new prime minister became Menachem Begin. Now, Menachem Begin, one of the first things that he did as a prime minister was to invite to his office in 1977 the head of the Mossad, Yitzhak Hofi, and he told him, bring me the Ethiopian Jews. That was one of the first things that Menachem Begin did as a prime minister in Israel. He wanted the Ethiopian Jews to come to Israel, but still the Ethiopian Jews didn't came. In the 70s, just to remind you, we had the Cold War in the world. The world was separated to two: countries that follow after the United States of America and countries that follow after the Soviet Union. Ethiopia, until 1974, we had the last emperor, Emperor Haile Selassie. In 1974, we had an army revolution. A young officer from the Ethiopian army took control of the country. His name was Mengistu Haile Mariam. And Mengistu Haile Mariam decided that Ethiopia will be a communist country and that she will follow after the Soviet Union. Israel, as you all know, always follow after the United States of America, which means that Israel and Ethiopia in the 70s didn't have diplomatic relationship. And that's why, even though the law of return apply on the Ethiopian Jews were not able to take a flight from Addis Ababa, the capital city of Ethiopia, to Ben Gurion Airport here in Israel. Mengistu Haile Mariam became a dictator. Now, when you are a dictator, you will always have individuals or groups that will start to rebel against you. Same thing happened in Ethiopia. There was a group called TPLF, Tigray People Liberation Front, that started to rebel against Mengistu Haile Mariam regime. Now, smart people in Israel saw the problem that Mengistu Haile Mariam have. And in Israel, they offered him what we call the arm deal. The arm deal, it's a deal between Ethiopia and Israel. Israel is willing to give Mengistu Haile Mariam weapon and advice, and in return, all you have to do is to let some thousands of Ethiopian Jews to leave the country. Mengistu Haile Mariam agreed, but he had one condition. It has to be a secret deal because of the Cold War situation. Everyone agreed, and in July 1977, the state of Israel started to send Mossad agents to the capital city of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Now, those Mossad agents coming to Africa, to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa, they don't speak the Amharic national language in Ethiopia. They don't understand the culture in Ethiopia. They don't know exactly where are the Jews' villages in Ethiopia, which means they needed help. One of the people that they were asking help from was my late brother, Ferede Yazezo Aklum. My brother in the 70s was 30 years old. He was a teacher. I'm not sure if you are familiar with ORT organization, but ORT It's organization that opened school for the Ethiopian Jews in the 60s in their villages to prepare them for the day that they will come to Israel. And my brother was a teacher in one of their schools. He had a very good English. And this is the reason why the Mossad agent approached to my brother. And they told my brother, listen, we have a mission for you. We want you to organize, to find 200 Ethiopian Jews from the list that we will give you. You can see the map. Ethiopian Jews used to live in the northern side of Ethiopia. You see Tigray up in the north and Gondar. This is where the Ethiopian Jews used to live. And in the middle, you can see the capital city, Addis Ababa. My brother was a teacher in Gondar. And they told my brother, we will give you a list of 200 Ethiopian Jews from the Gondar area. We want you to bring them to Addis Ababa, the capital city, so that we will take them to Israel. Now, when my brother heard those Mossad agents telling him that 200 Ethiopian Jews are going to fulfill that dream to return back home to Zion after more than 2,500 years, he told the Mossad agent, I'm willing to help, but I want to be one of the 200. You have to understand, the dream to return back home to Zion, to Jerusalem, it's a dream that every Jew in Ethiopia had. And we dreamed about this day, that one day we will return back home to Jerusalem, and it passed on from generation to generation. Now, my brother is hearing that 200 Ethiopian Jews are going to fulfill that dream. So he told the Mossad, I will help you, but I want to be one of the 200. Now, those Mossad agents told my brother, listen, it's a pilot. We will have more groups in the future, but in the meantime, we need your help. My brother understood that those Mossad agents are coming to save his community. So he said, I must help them. And this is exactly what he did. He organized the 200 Ethiopian Jews from Gondar, and he brought them to Addis Ababa. In November 1977, for the first time, legally, 200 Ethiopian Jews coming to Israel. That's a big news. That's a big thing for the Ethiopian Jews. Unfortunately, few weeks after the group arrived, in Israel at that time, we had the foreign minister, Moshe Dayan. And Moshe Dayan had a press conference in Geneva. And one of the journalists asked him, Moshe, does Ethiopia have a deal with Israel? Are you guys giving weapon and advice to Mengistu Haile Mariam, the dictator, and in return you're getting Ethiopian Jews outside of Ethiopia to Israel? Now we all know that it's a secret deal, which means he should have tried to avoid that question, the same that politicians are avoiding questions when they want to. But unfortunately, Moshe Dayan spoke freely about this deal, and he told the world that there is a deal between Ethiopia and Israel. When the dictator from Ethiopia heard about that, the first thing that he did was to cancel the deal. The second thing that he did was to tell all the Mossad agents that are in the land of Ethiopia to leave immediately. But he did one more thing. He started to chase after all the Ethiopian Jews activists that took part in this deal. One of them is my brother. My brother became a wanted man in his own country. And guys, to be wanted men in Ethiopia in the 70s, it means that if they will catch you, you are a dead man. Now, what would you do if you know that your life is at risk? The only option that you have is to run away. Where will you run to? The closest country to the northern side of Ethiopia is Sudan. Now, there is two problems with Sudan. The one problem is that Sudan is a Muslim country. It's not safe for a Jew to be in Sudan, but you can hide your identity as Jew. The second problem is the distance between Gondar and the capital city, Khartoum in Sudan. We're speaking about more than 300 miles. Now, if we were speaking about taking a flight from Gondar to Khartoum, that's an easy thing. If we are speaking about taking a car from Gondar to Khartoum, that's an easy thing. But my brother had to walk 300 miles from Gondar to the capital city, Khartoum in Sudan. Now, this area up in the north, it's a desert area, which means it's not an easy walk. The sun is shining. You have wild animals in the desert. In the beginning, you take some amount of money, some food, some water. You don't know exactly how much time it will take you. You have the checkpoint of the soldiers on their way. It took my brother more than 2 months to do the journey from Ethiopia to Sudan. When he arrived to Sudan, the only thing that he had on him that worth something was a notebook with some addresses of some Mossad agent that he worked with few months before in Ethiopia, and a wedding ring. He decided to sell the wedding ring. He earned some Sudanese lira. Now, every normal person, after a journey like this, that have some amount of money, the first thing that he will do will be to buy food and water. But my brother decided with the money that he earned to buy some pen and letters and to go to the main post office in Khartoum, Sudan, and to send letters to his contacts telling them, it's me, Naftali Aklum, I'm in Khartoum, Sudan, please save me. Now I want you to think about it. It's already 1979. Think about it. East Africa, Sudan, a Jewish guy sending letters. He's not quite sure that his letter will arrive to the address that he sent the letters to. But he's waiting. He's waiting 5 months. And in those 5 months, he's living as a homeless in the street of Khartoum. But after 5 months, not only that his message arrived, the Mossad decided to send a young Mossad agent, Danny Limor, to save my brother from the street of Khartoum. I will not go into details how Danny Limor found my brother in Khartoum, but I will tell you that it took him 3 days to find my brother in Khartoum, Sudan. Now, when my brother saw this young Mossad agent coming to save him, I can tell you that when we asked my brother what was the happiest day of his life, we always thought that he will tell us the day of his wedding or the day of the birth of his first child. But this day that Danny Limor found him in Khartoum, Sudan, was the happiest day in his life, because he understood then 2 things. One, Danny Limor just saved his life, because few days like this in the street of Khartoum and he would be a dead man. The second thing that he understood is that Danny Limor will fulfill his dream to return back home to Zion. But my brother was a very special person. He didn't think about himself only. He told himself, I escaped from Ethiopia to Sudan. And in Sudan, the government of Israel is saving me. Now, maybe, but maybe, there is a way to fulfill the dream for all the Ethiopian Jews to return back home to Zion if they can only come to Sudan. Because if they will come to Sudan, the government of Israel can save them and bring them from Sudan to Israel. So my brother had to lie to the young Mossad agent. He told him, listen, Danny, by the way, I am not the only Jew here in Sudan. There are more Jews. If you will give me 1 month, instead of just taking one Jew, you will take more Jews. Just give me 1 month to find them in Sudan. Of course, my brother lied. He knew that there are no Jews in Sudan, but he wanted to earn time. To earn time, why? Because he wanted to bring Jews from Ethiopia to Sudan. He did a pilot on his family. And when that pilot was a successful one and they arrived to Sudan, he knew that it's about time to send letters to all the Jewish villages in Tigray, in Gondar, telling them, come to Sudan. From Sudan, you will be able to go to Jerusalem. Now, when the Ethiopian Jews saw an opportunity, they left everything behind. When my family started the journey, I was 6 months old. I was a baby. Now think about babies. Think about adults. Think about people that had to leave everything behind, their house, their land, their properties. They don't even have time to sell. In my village, there was an old man. He was 82 years old. His family told him, listen, stay here. Don't go on that journey. You will not make it. The old man told his family, I'd rather die on my way to Jerusalem, but I will not stay here. And he died on the way. From 1979, listen carefully, till 1984, 20,000 Ethiopian Jews left their villages going to the unknown because no one promised them that in the end they will make it to Jerusalem. Out of the 20,000, 4,000 Ethiopian Jews died on their way because of starvation, disease. When the Ethiopian Jews arrived to Sudan, they put them in refugee camps. And in those refugee camps, we, the Ethiopian Jews, we call it the Holocaust of the Ethiopian Jews. Why? Because every day in those camps, between 10 to 20 people died because of the food that they gave them in the refugee camps, disease in the refugee camps. Many Ethiopian Jewish women were raped by the Sudanese soldiers. And why? Just because we wanted to fulfill a dream and to return back home. The story that I'm telling you right now, it's a story that even here in the Israeli society, people are not aware of it. People don't know how much the Ethiopian Jews had to sacrifice to return back home to Zion. Now, I want to show you a quick video so that you will understand what we had to sacrifice in order to return to Israel. Sorry, that's not the right video.
אני כותב את המכתב הזה לאנשים שלעולם לא יקראו אותו. זהו ניסיון נואש לעורר את זכרם שנשכח בתוך ים של זיכרונות עצובים בארץ מוכת האסונות הזו. הפסימיים יטענו שאני מעורר מתים, הציניקנים יצהלו שאני מגזים, אבל אני חרד שאתם תשכחו מבלי שאף אדם ישים לב. אתם לא 100 ולא 200, אלא 4,000 איש ואישה, זקנים וטף, שהאמינו שמקומם כאן, ניסיתם להגשים את חלומכם ויצאתם למסע רגלי מפרך, דרך ג'ונגלים סבוכים, נהרות גויים ומדבריות אימתניים, שבהם רוצחים ואנסים מטילי אימה וחסרי לב. אבל נשארתם שם, במרחב האינסופי, קבורים בתוך אדמה זרה בקבר לא מסומן. לא מעט מכם מבלי שאיש הניח עפר על גופותיכם. אך למרות הסכנות, המשכתם לצאת בהמוניכם למסע שכמדומני לא היה כמותו מאז יציאת מצרים. צעדתם בלילות ובימים והגעתם אל סודן הארורה. סודן פערה את פיה ואימה לטרוף את כולנו מבלי להשאיר זכר. לא מעט מכם גרו בשכנות אליי, באותם מחנות פליטים שהפכו למלכודת מוות מדי בוקר עם זריחת השמש. גברים חסונים, אמהות רחומות וילדים שטרם טעמו את טעם החיים נבלו שם כפרחים בשמש. כמו כל אלה שהיו שם, נאלצתי לראות אתכם גובעים מול עיניי, וליוויתי אתכם לאותם מקומות מסתור שנקראו קברים. לא אשכח את הלילות בהם דנו איך להיפטר מגופותיכם בסתר, הרחק מעיניהם של גויים עוינים. לא אשכח את הימים בהם הפנים היו חרושות דמעות יבשות, ולא את רגעי הייאוש וחוסר האונים. לא אשכח איך כל דאגותיי היו לאלה שישארו בחיים אחריי, והצטרכו לסכן את עצמם בחיפוש אחר מקום לקבור את גופתי. בסודן הארורה איבדנו את כבודנו האנושי האחרון. משפחותיהם של אחדים מכם נמחקו כאילו לא נבראו מעולם. ילדים נותרו יתומים, הורים שקלו את ילדיהם, גברים איבדו את נשותיהם ונשים נותרו ללא בעלים. את כל זה עשיתם כדי להגיע אל ארץ נחלתכם, אך לשווא. בארץ שחלמתם לחיות בה, האנשים חיים בקצב מסחרר, והזיכרון שלהם קצר מאוד. אנשים שאפילו לא זוכרים את המלחמה של הקיץ האחרון, ובוודאי שאין להם זמן לזיכרון העבר. ואני חרד שזיכרונכם יישאר נחלת מעטים, ויתפוגג לו בחלוף הדור שחווה את המסע על בשרו.
Now, thank God, most of my family made it to Israel. I lost my grandfather in Sudan. In Israel, we celebrate Jerusalem Day. Jerusalem Day, it's a day that we celebrate the release of Jerusalem in 1967 from the Jordanian. And we celebrate that every year. On Jerusalem Day, we, the Ethiopian Jews, remember those 4,000 that didn't make it and died on the way. And we do have to remember them. If you will go over the Ethiopian Jews families here, you will always find someone who lost someone in Sudan. And we always have to remember them. My community made the ultimate sacrifice to return back home to Zion. I came to Israel when I was 1 year old. One of the first cities that received the Ethiopian Jews was my city, a city in the south that's called Beersheba. And to grow up here was not easy. I grew up in a neighborhood that had maybe 90% Ethiopian Jews. The school that I went had the same amount, 90% Ethiopian Jews. It means that when you wake up in the morning and go to school, and from school you go back to your neighborhood, all you see is your community. You don't really get to see the Israeli society. Now, when you put a lot of people from low economic status in one neighborhood, you will eventually create a neighborhood that will have drugs, alcohol, crime, and violence. And this is the neighborhood that I grew up into. And if you don't have parents that will show you the limit, you will probably find yourself one day in jail. I grew up also being very embarrassed of my parents because my parents came, they were very old. They didn't have a job. They didn't speak Hebrew. And when I wanted, for example, help in homework, my parents were not able to help me. When I wanted new shoes, my parents were not able to provide me. So I look at my parents always when I was a kid as weak parents, which mean, what kind of parents are you if you are not able to buy me new shoes? And when they wanted, for example, to go to a different office, they had to take me with them because I'm the one that speaks Hebrew. So they were a burden on me. Growing up in Israel also, I had identities problem because, as you can see, I'm a black man and I'm a Jewish and I'm an Israeli. And I was, as a kid, I didn't like the color of my skin. I didn't like to be a black man because it's not easy to be a black man in a country that a vast majority is white. Even though we live among our brothers and sisters, from time to time they used to call us in different nicknames like Negro Samba and things like that. And as a kid, I was asking God, why did you brought me to this world as a black man if it's not easy to be a black man in this world? And I was always proud Jew and proud Israeli. But when I was a kid, I didn't like the color of my skin. In the age of 18, here in Israel, I don't know if you know, it's mandatory. We have to go to the army. And we understand why, because we have to protect our country. And in the age of 18, I joined the army. I served in the Air Force as a firefighter. And in the army, I had a great experience because that was the first time that I really saw the Israeli society. I saw the one from Tel Aviv. I saw the one from the kibbutz, from the moshav. And for me, it was a great experience. I still have lots of friends from those days, and they are friends for life. And I'm happy that I served. First, I served my country. And on the way, I really saw the Israeli society. You guys, or most of you, are students, I believe, between the age of 18 till 24 or 25. Here, they're taking the best years in a man's life. The age 18 till 21, I know that in America, it's the craziest years, right? You guys having parties, fraternities, going to school, having fun. And I'm very jealous about that. But here we have different reality. Here we have to defend our country and we're going to the army. And we're doing that and we understand why we doing so. So after the army, we Israelis usually take 1 year off and we are traveling in the world. So I traveled after the army. I traveled in South Asia for 1 year. And then I came back. I did my first degree here in my city, in Ben Gurion University, in political science and government. And after the degree, I started to work in the education system. And while I was working in the education system, I saw how much the Israeli society doesn't know the story of the Ethiopian Jews. 11 years back, I did something that changed my life. I went back for the first time to our roots trip back to Ethiopia. I saw a beautiful country with beautiful culture and beautiful people. I went back to the village that I was born. I saw friends of my family. They told me about my father, who used to be a judge in the village. They told me how much they miss the Ethiopian Jewish community that used to live there. And in a man's life, there is always a point that can change your life, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. When I came back from this roots trip, I returned a different person. I came back from this trip even more proud Jew, a proud Israeli, but a very proud black man. Black is beautiful. And when you have all those little identities within you and you accept them as who you are, this is who you are. This is the package. This is me, Naftali Aklum. I'm an Israeli, I'm a black man, and I'm a Jewish. This is me, and I love that. So when you accept yourself the way you are, people will accept you. When I returned from this road trip, my father was a very sad, a sick man. He was in the hospital after a few strokes. And the first stop was to visit my dad, to tell him about my experience. My dad didn't speak, so I had to whisper to his ears, and I told him, Dad, I just came back from Ethiopia. What a beautiful country. That evening, I told my father one more thing. I told him, Dad, you are a hero. I admire you, and I love you. And why it's so important? Because it took me 30 years to tell my dad that I love him, admire him, and that he is a hero for me. I never told my dad that I love him. 10 days after this meeting in the hospital, my dad passed away. You see, we grew up here. When we were looking for role models within our community, we never found one. I do have dreadlocks, as you can see. I have dreadlocks because when I was 16, 15 years old, in my neighborhood, we were looking for black people that we can look up to. And we didn't find anyone here in Israel. So some of my friends went back with their head and went to America, and they saw artists like Tupac or B.I.G. as people that they can look up to because they are black people who made it, became superstars. I'm not a big fan of rap, but I'm a big fan of reggae music. And there was one guy a few years ago, Robert Nesta Marley, I believe you know him as Bob Marley, as someone that I can look up to. And when I heard or started to research about my community, I saw that my parents are heroes. My parents, those who sacrificed their life to return back home to Israel, they are the true heroes. But I didn't know about that. When I knew, I told my dad. But unfortunately, he passed away 10 days after that. I decided after this trip that I want to make change in life. And if you want to make change in life or in your society, sometimes you have to take big risks. And the risk that I took was to quit my job. And I had a very good job with good salary. But sometimes in life, if you want to make change, especially in society, you have to take big risks. I quit my job and I opened my social venture, Yerus, which is to tell the story of my community. Today in Israel, we have 150 Ethiopian Jews. It's less than 2% of the population. We still have lots of challenges. Unfortunately, yes, we do suffer from time to time from racism, discrimination, and police brutality. In 2018, 2 young Ethiopian Israelis was shot by police and died. We do have lots of challenges. Many of my community believe that the best way to fight against racism and discrimination is to demonstrate, to protest. And this is one more tool in a democratic country to fight against something that is not right. I decided that my way to fight against racism, discrimination, police brutality, is to educate the people. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm giving lectures, workshops, almost everything to educate the people here in Israel and the people abroad about my community. I was very lucky. By the way, I spoke about the challenges that we have. In this picture, you can see some of the success that we, the Ethiopian Jews, have. We have the guy up in the right, Gadi Varken, which is a Knesset member. He is the Vice Minister of Home Security. In the left, we have Eden Alene, which will represent Israel in the next Eurovision. We have Titi Anyao, who won the beauty here in Israel. And we have Pnina Tamanu-Shata, who is a Minister of Immigration here in Israel. So we are a small community, but we have lots of success as well. I was very lucky to work with Hollywood on a movie called The Red Sea Diving Resort. The Red Sea Diving Resort, it's a movie that tells the story of how the Mossad brought the Ethiopian Jews from Sudan to Israel. I was image consulate for this movie. And we have actors like Chris Evans, Holly Bennett, Michael K. Williams is playing my brother in this movie. And I would like you to see a trailer of this movie, and then you can watch it for free on Netflix. We have a book that we wrote, The Story of a Zionist Hero, The Power of One. If you would like to have a copy signed by me of this book, then please let Martin or let me know. I will leave my details after that. The cost of a book, it's $40. So if you want me to send it to you, please write me or send an email to me, and I will send you the book. I will finish with some word of our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
משפחת אקלום היקרה, אזרחים ואזרחות נכבדים. סיפור עלייתם של יהודי אתיופיה הוא אחד מסיפורי הגבורה המרתקים בהיסטוריה של עמנו. אבל זה סיפור שלא נחשף במידה הראויה לציבור הישראלי. החברה הישראלית אינה יודעת על המנהיגים פורצי הדרך. הם נטלו על עצמם סיכון חיים ופרצו דרך לרבבות של משפחות להגיע לציון. הם יצאו באישון לילה, לעתים עם צרור מטלטלים קטן, צעדו בלילות, מרחק של מאות קילומטרים, תוך התמודדות עם כל הקשיים שבדרך. הקושי הפיזי, ההליכה אל הלא נודע, התקפות של שודדים, רוצחים אפילו, צמא, רעב, מחלות. בני משפחות רבות לא עמדו במאמץ ומתו בדרך. צריך רצון מברזל, חלום וכמיהה לירושלים כדי להתמודד עם כל האתגרים הללו. היה לכם את זה. הייתה לכם כמיהה עתיקת יומין לאורך דורות לציון, הכמיהה שדחפה את המשפחות למסע המיוחד הזה. עד היום כמעט לא דובר ולא סופר סיפור הגבורה הזה, אבל כעת יש הזדמנות לתקן. כעת יש הזדמנות להביא את סיפור עליית יהודי אתיופיה כחלק מפסיפס סיפורי העלייה של יהודים מכל חלקי תבל. ללא הסיפור שלכם, מארג ההיסטוריה שלנו חסר. אני רוצה למלא את החסר הזה. אני מבקש להודות ליוזמי הכנס על ההזדמנות להביא לקדמת השיח הציבורי את סיפור הגבורה יוצא הדופן של פרדה יזזו אקלום, זיכרונו לברכה. פרדה היה חלוץ שפרץ יחד עם אנשי המוסד את הנתיב לעלייתם של יהודי אתיופיה לישראל דרך סודאן. בעקבותיו באו עוד רבים. כל אחד תרם כמידת יכולתו, אבל המשותף לכולם היה שהם התעלו מעבר לאינטרסים המשפחתיים או האישיים הצרים וסייעו לקהילה כולה. נתינה שכזו, אומץ לב שכזה, אלה ראויים שיהיו מודל לחיקוי לדור הבא של מדינת ישראל. ברכותיי לכם וכולכם.
In Ethiopia, we said 50 lemons are a burden to one person, but when carried by many, they are light, delicious, and have beautiful fragrance. So thank you very much. And I would like to wish you all Shana Tova and a Happy New Year. And here is all my details, my Facebook, my email, my website, my phone. And I guess it is. Thank you so much, Martin. Eastern Michigan University for the opportunity to come here and to speak with you about the Ethiopian Jews. And now I guess it's time for questions.
Yeah, so if anyone has questions, we have a Q&A box that should be at the bottom of your screen that you can type them in. For this first little moment, we are going to prioritize student questions. So if there are students who are attending who would like to ask questions, if you want to put those in the Q&A box now. Looks like we have one of them at the moment. Naftali, I don't know if you can see that as well.
Yeah. As a Black Israeli, do you feel have shared experience with Mizrahi, Bedouin, Palestinian, and other groups in Israel and the West Bank? Yeah, I feel that the same thing that happened to the Sfaradim from Morocco, the Mizrahim, what you call Mizrahim, from Morocco, from Tunisia, is happening to us as well. And we still, for example, living in the same street. If you will go to neighborhoods today, tough neighborhood, it's mainly citizens of Mizrahim and Ethiopian Jews. So yeah, we do feel that we share the same experience every day. Any films in addition to the Red Sea Resort and Live become that tell your story? So yeah, we don't have one more story, but I can tell you that besides the Red Sea Diving Resort, today we are working on a documentary movie with a company from Australia, because I don't know if you know, but Hollywood is not making the same movie on the same topic in 10 years. So we're doing it with a company in Australia. So it will be a documentary movie. It will be great. And yeah, we're looking forward for that. How many Ethiopian Jews are there today in Israel? We have 150 Ethiopian Jews. 150,000, right? 150,000 Ethiopian Jews. I recently heard a talk by Efrat Yudrai, who is the chairwoman of the Association of Ethiopian Jews. Could you talk about some of the key Ethiopian Jewish organizations, their different activities? Well, I'm not a big fan of those organizations, unfortunately, because when you are part of organization, you are very involved, if you want it or not, with politics. So I prefer to be, free myself and not being influenced by this party or this party. So about those organization, what they are trying to do is to bring to the forefront the problems, the challenges that we, the Ethiopian Jews, are dealing with here in Israel. If they're doing it good or right, again, I'm not a big fan of those organizations. Do you have your own rabbi and synagogues? Yes. By the way, in Beersheba, we have the first Ethiopian synagogue in Israel. It was built in 1990. And yeah, we have our own rabbis. We call it the Kesim. They are our spiritual leaders. And yeah, so we have them here. Oh, and we have them all over the country. How many Ethiopian Jews are in the Knesset today? So today we have two. We have Gadi Yavarkan from the Likud party, who is the Vice Minister of Home Security. And we have Pnina Tamano-Shata from Blue and White Party, she is the Minister of Immigration here in Israel.
Naftali, I think we're going to do one more. So pick whichever last one you would like to answer.
All right. What sort of relationship do you have now with the Haredi? Oh, that's an interesting question, because if you will go over the country those days, you will find a lot of Ethiopian Jews becoming Haredim. So yeah, there is a lot of Ethiopian Jews that become Haredim, and they are very influenced from the party Shas, which is a Haredim party. And we were supposed to have another Knesset member in Shas, in the Haredim party, but he decided that he wants to stay in the Kollel to give, lessons to his student. So yeah, we do have lots of Haredim within our community today. In what cities are there significant numbers of Ethiopian Jews? So Netanya will be number one, the city of Netanya. In Beersheba, you have a lot of Ethiopian Jews. In Rehovot, you have a lot of Ethiopian Jews. So, but Netanya is number one. All right, thank you guys.
Am I on, Cole?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Oh, here I am.
Here you are.
I'd like to thank Naftali Aklum for a fabulously enlightening lecture. Lots of stuff I didn't know. I would like you all to know that in Israel right now it is 3 a.m. in the morning, and Naftali was so astonishingly kind to be willing to do this so we could do it at night. And there are no words for me to thank you enough, Naftali, for your kindness and your decency and your willingness to come and visit with us this evening. I know our students loved it. I'm already seeing notes that our community loved it. I am so deeply appreciative to you. And send me please, Naftali, send me your information. I will post it both on my Facebook page and on the Jewish Studies Facebook page. So if people want to get a copy of your autograph, of your autographed book about your brother, we will make that available to them. The EMU Center for Jewish Studies has purchased some, so we have some as well. And we'll make some available to our students. And I'd like to thank you so much for your kindness and your being here with us and telling us a story that I frankly think most of us don't know about, and enlightening for all of us, especially at this time in the United States, and especially given racial relations this time in the United States. It's an astonishing story. Thank you so much. And for all of you who've come out tonight, thank you for coming. Once again, we have had I think a fabulous visitor and a fabulous guest, and I'm delighted to be able to be part of bringing this to you and sharing this with you. I only wish we could be doing this in person. I only wish we could have Naftali here, because I'd love to shake his hand and give him a hug. You all have a wonderful evening. Shana Tova. Take good care and good night.